Is over-tourism, which is really another way of saying we messed up tourism. And here's the thing. Good judgment comes from bad experiences. And bad experiences comes from bad judgment. So we're in this vicious cycle. And let me start by bringing up the representative from the distinguished cities that are making presentations today, and then I'll bring up the introductory speaker. So we have today, first, from Uruguay, Colonia del Sacramento, we have Walter De Benedetti. We have Walter. Where's Walter? Did I say that right? De Benedetti. If you would join us on the white chairs over here. From Bordeaux, France, we have Edouard Berton Sarindat. I hope I got that right too. Is Edouard here? Yes, great. If you would join us here. And then we have, of course, the outspoken mayor of Dubrovnik, Mato Frankovic. If you would join on stage here. And to lead off this session with our introductory talk we have, I'm really honored because I spent some time with him last night, and he's really a fun guy, and I know you're going to enjoy listening to him today. You're in for a treat. He is the associate professor at Breda University, and he co-authored the UNWTO report on overtourism. I think you were the author who did most of the work, right? I always am. You always do all the work, okay. The other guy just signed his name at the end. He's going to provide you some new ideas on overcrowding that you may have never considered before, and they're going to help really put things in perspective. So to set the tone for this next session, couldn't be more honored. Come on up and join us. Let's give a big round of applause to Koens. Here we go.
Are we ready? Yep. I'll get on with it straight away because I have a lot to say, I think, and I am always late, so hope to be in time this time. Introduction over tourism. And with an introduction, I'll try and say, I would like to start just by making clear some of what I see misconceptions that sometimes relate to over tourism, and just give you an introduction of how I see the topic, based on my experience. Over tourism, what we see is that tourism to cities is growing, like World Heritage cities, rapidly growing tourism, and in a way that's a good thing, because cities are much more resilient, have much greater networks and facilities to deal with a lot of guests. They have a lot of guests permanently, their residents. So they're far more dynamic, for example, than Mount Everest. I'm certain you've seen the photo. Luckily, in cities, that won't happen that quickly. And also what you see is with the new developments, you have a lot of new tourism products coming, like this in Rio de Janeiro. You can really get up close and personal with all that lovely heritage that's there. But is that really a good idea always? I mean, that is basically what we're talking about here, over tourism. We need to be a bit careful, because tourism is not a panacea. There's a lot of pressure now on local culture, local heritage and the environment. And you see in a lot of cities already that support for tourism is losing out on that. Now that is important, but before we think about that, let's first come back to over-tourism, because what is over-tourism really? I think it's not one type of impact, and I am always a bit worried about the term over-tourism, because it suggests that it's just about too many people. And yes, too many people can be a problem. Absolutely true. We've seen all the photos. But it's more diverse than that. It can also be too much impact. You do not need a lot of tourists to have a negative impact. I, for work, sometimes need to be in Amsterdam, don't live there, but I work there sometimes. And I go by bicycle, I'm Dutch. There is nothing in the world more annoying than I cycle, I'm in a massive rush, and I get to my traffic light, it's on red, but I know it's on red, and I know I can get through, because it's a useless traffic light, I know the city. I arrive, and bang, there's a couple of tourists there waiting for the red traffic light. Who in their right mind stops for a red traffic light? And of course, they just stick to the rules. I know the informal road rules, and just adjust my behavior to it. People who live in the city do that very often, on loads of different occasions. And visitors often just don't get it. So it's not malignant when we talk about adverse impact. Yes, it's also the drunk tourists who cause a lot of nuisance, but it's much more subtle than that as well. And then thirdly, it's also too much tourism infrastructure, which I've already heard quite a bit in the previous discussions. Tourism infrastructure is competing with the local retail, the local infrastructure, and it can lead to monocultures, and particularly in heritage cities. I would say, like, this monoculture is very dangerous because it's endangering the uniqueness of the city. So 3 different types of impacts that require very different approaches to deal with. It's not one size fits all. We need to look at the local context. What are the issues? What is happening here? And manage it in a way that fits with that local context. Another thing that I not always see happening is that people tend to see over-tourism as a tourism problem. In my perspective, it's not a tourism-only problem at all. It's a social problem, and it can be an outing of other social problems too. Now, undoubtedly, I'm not saying anything strange when I say that there are certain trends in tourism that have caused over-tourism. You can see them on the left. There are several others, but are just basically for reference. But the ones on the right, you don't hear so much about. Basically, the number of people in cities is rising worldwide. Those people live there day in, day out. The number of commuters is also rising worldwide in cities. They also make use of the city. So the city infrastructure is having to cope with this additional stress. And on top of that come the tourists. So it's a mixed message. And it's the same thing if you look at real estate speculation. Those tourism shops are partially there because it's become so expensive to rent that local shops can't afford it, and tourism shops have higher margins. So there is an underlying problem there. Same with Airbnb. New ways of working. Now you can see it in different ways. Residents work much more in cafes nowadays, like gig economy. You have freelance work compared to 20 years ago. That's much more common. But it's also, we work much more on different times of the day and in the weekends, etc., when there's also many visitors. So that means that we get more in touch with each other. And if I am working, I don't really want to engage with a local. Might be me being antisocial, but I need to work. Also, the better connectivity makes opponents easier visible. So it's great, social media, because it's maybe brought out some murmurings in the cities that have now basically just found a platform to come up. So it's complicated. It's a very complicated issue. And you need to manage that. Basically, quote from Tel Aviv, growth is not the enemy, it's how we manage it. It's very, very forceful on this, so I think it's a bit more nuanced, but I do agree that we just need to manage it. We cannot sit back and just let the world go to hell. We need to work on it. What I'm now going to talk about is some things that we found, research on dealing with visitors. We started our work in 2014 and have done a lot of work with cities, experts, see the cities here, and got several feedback sessions too. It's resulted in several UNWTO reports. The second one is just out, and some of you here have contributed to it, so thank you very much. And that has a lot of examples of how cities deal with over-tourism, so very interesting. The first one has more the framework. I'm going to explain a bit from that. What we found in our research is that there's a great awareness and willingness among cities nowadays to cope with this. And that's great. It's a difference from 5 years ago, 5-6 years ago, when there was much less of that. But now, practically every city is on the ball. It's so common. We need to do something with it. And a lot of things are happening. We found 70 types of policies and 11 main strategies. There's probably more. But a lot of things happening. I'll quickly talk you through those 11 strategies. Just very quickly. You can find them elsewhere. But it's here they are. Firstly, regulation. Although I don't like the term over-tourism, I do think the debate is actually very interesting because it's brought back some sense of maybe we need regulation. Maybe we need a government steering us. We need a strategy. We need a vision. And that's fairly new. But I think it's positive because it allows someone to take control again of what's happening. Visitor segmentation. We all want cultural tourists. Spreading visitors to the city, around the city. It's getting a bit of bad press nowadays, and it's now more used to stimulate economic development outside of tourism. We have time-based rerouting. That can be, by the way, during the year or during the course of a day. For example, you make Sunday mornings free. Itineraries to go to other places, improve city infrastructure, very important, incredibly difficult to achieve. But it's seen as one of the most powerful ones. Creating joint experiences. What we see here, for example, in Copenhagen, they say, we create experiences for our residents and visitors can join in. But it's for the residents, so it's joint. Financial benefits, or even not financial ones, so make people benefit from the visitor economy. For example, a non-economic one is you can keep public transport open by using tourists making use of it. We have communicating with visitors and with local stakeholders. Very important, we've heard it already several times, particularly with regards to heritage. Communication is key. People need to know what's going on and what is our heritage, what is tourism, what is it doing. Unless we can get that straight, we are going to have a problem. And finally, responsive measures. What you see now is that a lot of it is just, we measure and then suddenly we see that there's a problem at a certain area. Longer term, you can start using big data for this to prevent problems, because you know when there will be certain stresses in certain parts of the city based on historic data and on big data. But that's not really happening yet. Some examples of things that are happening. I mean, it's always nice to have some examples. London has made a mobile gaming app to encourage visitors to go to other destinations than they would normally go to, so spread out a little bit and create a better experience for the visitor. We have in Salzburg, they have created a joint identity with their regions, enlarging their area whilst keeping the same kind of spirit. And it's this whole Sound of Music thing, which I've never seen the film. I hope it's nice, but a lot of people like it. One of my personal favorites comes from Paris. It's now used in other cities as well. Street artists are used to fight noise pollution. So particularly in suburban areas, where noise pollution is an issue, you can use street artists who basically guide you to places where you can talk a bit more, or they can tell you just to quiet them down a bit. Now, that's brilliant. I think if I lived there, it'd be nice and quiet. It's also brilliant because I have young children. Any chance I get to take them out of the house and be entertained by some street artists, I would jump on it. It's amazing. I love them dearly, but it's hard work. So it's a great one. Policies for how to behave. So this is just communicating with your visitors. What do we do? And this is a new one. It's used in Bruges and in Amsterdam, an obligation to use earphones and a microphone when you have large groups. It's not a rocket science one, but it's very interesting to see that this new type of legislation or regulation is starting to take off again. It's nice. Some problems, though. You see a lot of the solutions now remain focused on the effects of tourism. It's not preempting it, like what Doug Lenski said at the very start of this conference. It's focusing on the effects. And what we also see, one of the reasons is that it's difficult to reach stakeholders. We say, look, we need a vision. Okay, who's going to make the vision? We don't know. Government needs to make the vision. There is no such thing as government. There's different departments. Who's going to be in charge? It's difficult. So those are two key problems. But it is key to solving that. Because I really think, as I said before, we have the problem that tourism is not over-tourism is not a tourism-only problem. So we need to move beyond just seeing it with tourism departments or tourism eyes or heritage eyes. We need to get everyone involved. And hopefully then we can create an adaptive city that can cope with this. Big question is how. Like I can leave you now and then you think, yeah, you've told everything, but we have no idea how we're going to do it. But we'll go to the dark side. We're going to try to instigate change, or I'll give you some ideas on what I think could be useful. And this is basically my key point. If only in dealing with all the issues that we see with over-tourism, we would talk to each other, with each other, rather than about each other. And that's happening a lot now. It's a problem, but people are working on it. With residents, a lot is happening. I really like the new Tourism Flanders strategy, the one on the right there. They are really engaging with residents and also with some other stakeholders. But it can be simpler. In Berlin, they do have a coffee, tell us what you want, get a free coffee, but you need to talk about tourism and what you want. What do you think is good, what is bad? And in other cities, online voting consultation is done, a bit like a referendum, but then in a positive way, and talking with residents in just group sessions. So that is something that cities deal with a bit. The big problem lies with those stakeholders. How do you get people with completely opposite interests on the table? Done a lot of work on it now, and this is what we've come up with as a solution. It's a serious game. And its pure goal is to bring stakeholders together to learn about each other's perspectives. What is it? It's a serious game. So we have a board game, physical, because we need people to touch it, no, not touch each other, but to touch key coins and that sort of thing. But it's linked to a digital dashboard. A model is behind it, which gives outcomes based on the data that we gathered during the course of 5 years. Some policy cards and some personas. There's no one tourist, there's no one resident. And here's just some images that we have doing that. It's always good fun. People are enthusiastic about it, and they really enjoy seeing the complexity of tourism in this wider context. Like, they really say, oh my God, we thought we knew, but after a couple of rounds, you played in rounds, people suddenly say, oh, if we work together, we might actually solve this problem. And it's like, bang, that's what we want. So it serves a purpose there. Other positive points you see there, the problem is it needs a follow-up to continue the discussion. On its own, it's not enough. Some concluding remarks. And basically, I've just already said this, it's not enough to look at the individual issues. We see a lot of experimenting, which is great. Like we already heard about Barcelona. It's basically a lot of these cities have become, well, it's a horrible term, but living labs. But there's a lot of things going on. Great, we can experiment. We need vision and strategy. We need leaders with an idea, and we need somebody to dare to take decisions. And sharing information is key. Really, we've got a lot of information, but if you have any innovative ideas, please share them with me. I will also share them with the research group, the expert group, to see if we can make something of this together so we can better share our ideas and move beyond this. Speaking of which, there's several cities here who have probably great ideas, and I'd love to hear from them. So I'll stop talking. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Great, thank you very much.